The cops humiliated him in front of a crowd, forcing him to crawl on the scorching pavement as though it was some twisted form of entertainment. They laughed, their faces smug with the satisfaction of dominance, believing they had crushed him entirely. But weeks later, the man they had broken became the one holding their careers in his hands. How did it all turn around? The sun hung low but blindingly bright over the sprawling parking lot of Plaza West, radiating heat that made the black asphalt shimmer. The place was busy with late-afternoon shoppers hurrying in and out, but Dominic Vega was too exhausted to care. At 43, after a 14-hour shift as a paramedic at Meridian City Medical, his only focus was getting to his car and going home. His uniform clung to him uncomfortably in the heat, and all he could think about was cracking open a soda and collapsing in front of his fan. Each step across the asphalt felt sticky, his worn sneakers clinging slightly with every move. "Hey! You! Stop right there!" The shout rang out, sharp and authoritative, cutting through the low hum of the parking lot. Dominic froze mid-step, his hand tightening instinctively on the strap of his faded navy blue backpack. Two uniformed officers were striding toward him, their faces tense and purposeful. The younger one, a tall, wiry man with close-cropped hair, was already pointing at him. "Is there a problem?" Dominic asked, his voice steady despite the unease curling in his chest. He had seen situations like this escalate too often to pretend it was nothing. He stood still, hands visible, trying not to make any sudden movements. "Get down! Hands behind your head!" barked the older officer, a stout man with a face weathered from years on the job. His voice carried across the lot, loud enough to make nearby pedestrians pause and turn their heads. Dominic blinked in confusion. "Sir, I think you've made a mistake," he began, his tone calm but firm. Before he could finish, the younger cop was on him, grabbing his shoulder and shoving him forward with a force that knocked the breath out of him. "I said get down!" the officer snapped, his grip bruising. Dominic stumbled and dropped to his knees, the unforgiving heat of the pavement searing through his uniform. Pain shot through his palms as he instinctively caught himself on the rough surface, but he stayed still, swallowing the humiliation. Phones were already out, the small crowd gathering as people whispered and filmed. Some bystanders looked shocked, while others openly speculated about what crime he must have committed. "Looks like they got him," someone muttered. "Probably another thief." The younger officer smirked, pulling out his own phone to record. "This one's going viral," he muttered loudly enough for Dominic to hear. Another wannabe who thought he could outrun the law. Dominic turned his head slightly, his voice low but firm. "I'm not a thief. I'm a paramedic. I just finished my shift." The older cop snorted, folding his arms. "Yeah, sure you are. Save it for the judge." The younger officer leaned down, gesturing to the ground. "Crawl. Let's make sure everyone sees what happens to people like you who think they're above the law." For a moment, Dominic hesitated, his mind racing as he scanned the faces in the crowd. Some looked away, embarrassed by the spectacle, but others leaned in closer, recording every second. His gaze caught on a woman standing a few feet back, her phone steady, her expression grim. She wasn't just watching, she was documenting. The asphalt burned his hands and knees as he moved forward on all fours, each movement deliberate. Laughter and jeers echoed around him, the crowd's judgment heavy on his back. "Man, this guy really thought he was untouchable," the older cop taunted. "Guess that fancy uniform doesn't mean squat here." When they finally let him go, it was without so much as an apology. The older cop waved dismissively. "Get out of here before we change our minds." Dominic stood slowly, brushing the dirt and sweat from his hands. His palms were raw, his pride shattered, but his resolve was solid. As he turned to leave, his eyes met the woman's again. She gave him a single, deliberate nod before slipping back into the dispersing crowd. Driving home, Dominic's knuckles turned white against the steering wheel. The physical pain of the burns was nothing compared to the fire now blazing in his chest. He replayed the incident in his mind, every word, every shove, every mocking laugh. By the time he reached his small apartment in East Meridian, the anger had crystallized into determination. This wasn't over. Sitting in front of his old laptop, the dim light of the screen illuminating his face, Dominic opened the viral video. The clip, shaky but clear, showed him crawling on the pavement, the officers laughing in the background. The caption read, "Caught in the act or caught for being black." The comment section was a battlefield. "Good job, officers. Teach him a lesson," one comment read, racking up likes. "He looks guilty to me. Why else would they stop him?" Another chimed in. But then there were others. "This is disgusting. When will this stop? Those officers need to be held accountable. Share this until something changes." Dominic scrolled through the comments, his pulse pounding. Then his inbox pinged. The subject line read, "We're here to help." It was from the Meridian Justice Initiative, a civil rights organization he had only heard about on the news. The email was direct. "Mr. Vega, we've seen the video of your encounter. If you're willing to take action, we want to support you." He didn't hesitate. Within hours, he was on a video call with Layla Torres, a seasoned attorney with a sharp gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor. "This isn't just about you," Layla said, her voice resolute. "It's about ensuring this doesn't happen to anyone else." Over the next week, Layla and her team moved quickly. They gathered witness statements, analyzed the video frame by frame, and uncovered other victims of the same officers, stories of excessive force, racial profiling, and intimidation. Meanwhile, the police department scrambled to defend itself. Their spokesperson appeared on local news, declaring that the officers had acted on reasonable suspicion. But Layla was ready. During a press conference, she presented evidence that dismantled their narrative. Time-stamped hospital records, proving Dominic was at work during the alleged theft, testimonies from colleagues, and damning footage from another bystander showing the officers laughing as they forced him to crawl. The department's credibility began to crumble. Then came the twist no one saw coming. An anonymous whistleblower leaked internal documents revealing that the two officers had a history of misconduct, including multiple complaints of racial profiling and unwarranted stops. Worse, their superiors had ignored the reports. The revelations sparked outrage. Protests erupted across Meridian, the streets filled with people demanding justice for Dominic and systemic reform. The video of his humiliation aired on every major news network, turning Dominic into a reluctant symbol of resilience. Interviews with Layla and other victims amplified the call for accountability. Sitting in a brightly lit studio across from a national news anchor, Dominic recounted his story. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "But I knew I couldn't stay silent. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's been treated like they don't matter." The anchor leaned forward. "What do you hope comes from this?" Dominic paused, then looked directly into the camera. "Change, real change, and it starts with holding those responsible accountable." By the time the interview aired, the momentum was unstoppable. The police chief resigned amid growing pressure, citing a need to focus on family. Few believed the excuse. The officers involved were suspended pending an internal investigation, but for Dominic, it wasn't enough. A few weeks later, a surprising headline appeared: "Dominic Vega applies for chief of police position." The announcement divided the city. Some questioned his motives, wondering why he would want to join the system that had wronged him. Others saw it as a bold move, a chance for real reform from within. During a press conference, Dominic addressed the skepticism head-on. "I know what it's like to fear the people sworn to protect you," he said, his voice unwavering. "I've lived it. That's why I'm here, to make sure no one else has to." Against the odds, Dominic was appointed chief of police. His first day on the job was surreal. Walking through the department's halls, he felt the weight of every stare, some curious, some resentful, others quietly hopeful. Sitting at his new desk, he opened a folder containing his first official act, termination papers for the two officers who had started it all. He hesitated for a moment, not out of doubt, but because of the gravity of the decision. There was no satisfaction in it, only a quiet determination to begin setting things right. With a steady hand, he signed the papers. As he put the pen down, he looked out the window at the city that had both broken and rebuilt him. This was just the beginning. For the first time in months, Dominic allowed himself a small, hopeful smile.